Brian, welcome back to the Resilience Lab. The roundtable we had was incredible, but I would like to take some time and just dial into the past 2-year journey and to kind of the debate in our industry on return to office, hybrid. So this longing to connect and be together and this challenge we have with people coming back in. What are you seeing people doing right? What do you see some of the challenge they're having? Most people want people to come back together and for good business reasons.
Yeah, I think that we form book clubs and bike clubs and things for a reason. We want to be with people just as a species. And there is real energy that transfers when you're, together with other folks. And so I think that within the right construct, we will see this balancing again. Will it ever be 100%, in the office again like it was before? I doubt it. But quite frankly, we weren't that way before. But I think if it's prescribed or engineered, I think it's destined to fail. Humans are erratic. We're not real logical sometimes. Life doesn't happen on a schedule. So I think if it's going to work, it's got to be built on a deserved trust environment, and that's a two-way street, right? As an employer, I trust you to do the job or task or whatever it is at hand when you're remote. But as the employee, you also have the responsibility to perform that at your best ability remotely. And I think that the companies that figure that out faster and get away from this, we don't work on Mondays and Fridays or Tuesdays, and I think that life just doesn't happen that way. Innovation doesn't happen that way. You can't have serendipity engineered. And so I don't think that anyone that tries that approach is probably going to be successful. And I also think that it's working okay from a task perspective, but I've long had a theory that whatever your innovation cycle is for your companies, whenever you miss one of those innovation cycles, you're going to have a stronger impetus to get people back together. And so some industries, those are longer than others.
Sure.
I can tell you from our own perspective, the 2 weeks we had our international designers in town working on new products, we got more done in those 2 weeks than we got done in 2 years over Zoom calls.
Wow.
And it was just the ability to iterate and ideate in real time to create something that could physically manifest itself in front of you. And so I think that that's going to be a jarring reality and something that'll get people back to a more balanced approach to this.
So how far did you go in terms of shutting down the office and having everybody work remote? And then what was the process of bringing people back?
Well, I guess the best thing about it is that we finally proved we could go paperless. So that was good for the environment because we were always told we couldn't before. But in all of our production facilities, we paid everybody for 2 weeks just to stay home, because until we could figure things out, we just said, hey, go home, full 40-hour pay. We'll let us get this figured out, create safe environments, find out what the CDC is saying, create the environment that's safe for you to work in and come back. In our offices, we extended that quite a bit longer, but it wasn't long. I think we were back at, I want to say 80% capacity in July of 20, and at full capacity for those that could return. We had certain folks with medical conditions and otherwise that couldn't. But it was never a forced return. It was, hey, our doors are open. Here's what we've done to keep you safe. And what we were finding is people were having more contact and worse experiences with COVID outside of work than inside of work, because that's where they were getting together socially without those safety measures in place. So,
wow.
Yeah, luckily we had no issues with getting people to come back in. And I think that's partially, though, the environment we created with our facilities being, well platinum certified. We have amenities there. It was also safe. We had, clean air, and all these other things that create a safe environment that we never had an outbreak.
But you also had a mindset around it too, in terms of communicating the positive value of getting together, keeping people connected. What do you think you guys have done differently than a lot of companies that are struggling right now in terms of getting lots of pushback and resistance? And I know your market's a lot different than an urban market like a San Francisco or a New York or something like that. But there's still some underlying things that I think that I've seen that you are doing differently?
Yeah, I would say we do have an unfair advantage. I would say when it comes to where we're located geographically, it's not dense. It's not densely populated. We have a lot of open air and space around us. People don't have to use mass transit to get to work. But I don't think it was anything we did in the pandemic. I think it's more emblematic of culturally what we've built over decades. I think it's the long game.
Yes.
That we've built trust over decades, and I think people understood and knew and know that we had their best intentions in mind. But that was also from being visible and communicating on almost a religious cadence, just to make sure that everybody knew what was going on, what our perspective on that was. We've talked a lot about in the past conversations that people want certainty, but if you can't have certainty, the next best thing is clarity. And we try to bring as much clarity as possible in such a wild and weird time.
What I like about the business that you're in, and when I used to be on that side of the table, is that you see dozens of different companies and their cultures and their process and how they treat people. So what did you see in terms of what did the pandemic do? And I like the fact that you said we had it in place ahead of time. A lot of companies didn't. So where did they struggle and why? And how did you see companies that did a good job of recovering or pivoting? What did you learn through that?
Yes, I guess backing up, it was it was probably 12, 15 years ago. Our VP of risk at the time, he's since unfortunately passed away, but he had brought into a board meeting that he wanted to do a business resilience test in case the avian bird flu turned into a pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
And we needed to be prepared for it. And embarrassingly, we laughed him out of the room. So like, what are you talking about now? And then here we've lived it now for 2.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
In looking at all the businesses and all the people we've talked to, because we were very regimented, again, in talking to our own people, but also in talking to all our partners. So we scheduled, my father and I, quarterly calls with our dealer partners across the country just to check in on them. And one of the things that we heard repeatedly was that we were the only ones that called just to see how they were doing. Everybody else was calling to see how business was or when was the next PO coming. And those were never conversations we wanted to have, nor did we have. So I think where we saw a lot of companies misstep is the leadership was not non-existent, but not present, if that makes sense. A lot of people moved to another state. I mean, it was almost like they went on sabbatical. I'm sorry, in times of crises, that's not when leaders take sabbaticals. And when in times of crises, you have to be on the front lines. You've got to be, first boots on the ground, last boots off, and you've got to be present. You can't feel a sense and pulse of the organization if you're not there every day, boots on the ground, understanding what the situation is.
Be in the moment. That's a phrase we hear a lot, but what does that mean for what you do or what you think leaders should do?
My wife will tell you I'm not very good at this, but I think it's listening. Maybe I use it all up at work. I that's not one of my skills, but I think being in the moment is being present in the situation and feeling and listening and hearing with all your senses and trying to really understand what your people are going through, kind of, looking through their lens. Again, for us, a lot of the exercises we were doing was trying to understand what it was like to be a, let's call it a typical American family, partner, 2 kids in a flat in Manhattan.
Wow.
To be completely quarantined, basically, and isolated. What was life like for them? We don't have that in Indiana. We can go out and our kids can play in the fields and run around and do whatever they want. But, trying to really think about it through that lens and then think about the psychology of that and then, kind of multiply that out and then try to understand how should we be empathetic to that and communicate out.
So what I found doing coaching during this period of time is that managers were kind of in the hot seat. They were in the pinch point. They had to achieve business results, but at the same time, they were put in a position of being life coaches, and none of them were trained. How did you see your managers? I'm sure some struggled, some adjusted okay, but what was their kind of roller coaster like? And how did you help them?
I think you nailed it. They went from kind of managing activities and projects and RFPs or to production, and all of a sudden they were life coaches, they were therapists, they were thrust into situations that most of us haven't found ourselves in if we haven't really managed through a crisis of some sort. It was interesting as we look back through our different, we call them family reunions, but national sales meetings, the lineup of speakers we had prior to the pandemic almost serendipitously, I think, prepared us in a sense for the leadership required. We had people from the Navy SEAL community. We had, different folks. We had one of my good friends, a nutritional psychologist. So we had these different people talking from different perspectives of mental aptitude, of resilience. So I think it allowed us to have those conversations. And honestly, we're really blessed to have great leaders in our organization, and we continue to try to develop them and give them the skills and the tools they need. Nobody was prepared for this. Nobody had a toolkit or a playbook, but I think for what we went through, I couldn't be prouder of what they did.
Yeah. And coming out of it, recognizing where we were strong and where we weren't, what kind of new skills, how do you prepare managers for the uncertainty ahead? I mean, we're going into uncertainty. We don't know if we're going to hit a recession. A lot of people kind of think so. We don't know what kind of global conflicts are going to happen. We don't know what kind of election we're going to have. And this keeps us in the churn, so to speak. So what tools or what ways or paths are you helping prepare your managers to be resilient and to be, to come back and say, I'm proud of you again because you stepped up?
To me, resilience is a muscle that needs to be worked. We've talked about Todd Bolsinger many times, and you don't just conjure up resilience in the moment. It's something that's developed and built over time. So as we go through these evolutions, the tools in our toolkit continue to get honed and developed and stronger and better. The thing that I worry the most about now is our leaders, the time they have to really sit in deep, meaningful conversations with our people, because now more than ever, they just need time to be heard, to be able to voice their concerns, to be able to voice their issues. It's been a slug for 2.5 years, no matter where you sit in the organization. And people need the opportunity to get that off their chest and to vent and to be heard. And it's one thing to listen to something. It's a whole nother thing to take that information in and respond to it in a meaningful way. And we've been slower than I want us to be. That we want to be as an organization. We've not, we've not ramped up as quickly as we should have and need to. But I think that as long as our people continue to create space too for their own mental well-being and health, and find mechanisms that are healthy mechanisms to relieve that stress and to just kind of take that weight off their shoulders, I think that's incredibly important.
Are there any structural changes you're making to free up that time or to shift the priority? We're creatures of habit. We do what we do. We're kind of driven to do more. And sometimes we just have to, one company that I was working with actually shut down the email on Friday afternoon. And they came up with no communication in the weekend, and they came up with a little icon, which was a referee's flag. And so if someone threw it, everybody just threw the flag, didn't say anything. But those are some of the things to try to shift the habits and shift the norms. Are you finding any that are helping you?
Yeah, I think we're trying to model that. So as when if you're on vacation, you better be on vacation, right? Turn it off. We've got other teammates that'll pick up the slack. I think that anything you can do from an exercise regimen or a diet regimen. We've had people kind of jump in this group we call the locker room. And it's been a group that's existed now for a few years. And it's really kind of an accountability club. And it's just each of us keeping the rest of the people in the locker room accountable for whatever their fitness goals are. I don't care if it's meditating 30 minutes a day or it's, running a marathon, or I just want to start eating right. And it started out as two of us, just to hold ourselves accountable and disciplined into our goals. And then now it's spun up to, I think now there's about 15 of us in the group. There's people come in and out of it, but for some of us, it's been significantly life-changing. And I think that if you can form those keystone habits that are healthy, that create an outlet for stress, I think those are some of the most significant things you can do. And I really think I'm so thankful and grateful for that group being formed before the pandemic, because I think that really helped all of us manage the stress of getting to where we are today.
There's another component to your success. Those are the distributors. And, having worked for distributors, entrepreneurs, very hands-on, usually very hands-on. They don't necessarily have either the processes in place or the ability to step back and think of the unintended consequences of decisions. How did you see distribution responding to this? What were some of the decisions that you think really, in retrospect, maybe hurt them a little bit, or which decisions did distributors make that really put them in a good position coming out of this?
Yeah, I think the ones that were, again, visible, both to their employees and their clients. I think those are the ones that definitely have come out in a significantly better position than others. Some, pivoted. I think all of us were doing some soul searching on business model, architecture, and you saw a bunch of different things kind of being tested, but I think the best ones were the visible ones. I think those that used it as an opportunity to get to clients that would previously not answer the phone because they were too busy. Well, they had a lot of free time, so that was a time to go create those relationships. The ones that spent a lot of time really talking with their employees and getting to understand them and their situation better. And so I think it was the ones that, again, that were visible, that were present, that did the best, because when the market started to turn and open back up, they had their foot was in the door well ahead of their competition. And when that happened both in, I would say, in manufacturers, dealers, design firms, and corporate real estate firms. So
one of the keys to resilience is having kind of a matrix of what the future might look like. We can't predict it. No one ever would have known 2 years ago, but you are looking forward. We know kind of the spigot's open, but there's other things. So as you're looking forward, what are you planning for on the upside? Where are you planning on the risk side?
Yeah, I think that as you look forward, you obviously, with the economic signals we have right now, with, inflation being where it is, and then obviously we got to start tightening interest rates, which is going to slow things down. And that's a delicate walk, right? It's extremely delicate, and we've seen it play out well and not play out well in the past. So we look at the model. Luckily, we learned a lot in the Great Recession of 8, 9, and we've created a financial system that allowed us to not even think about that during the pandemic. It's self-regulated, so it allowed us to focus on people and our folks, and really shift our focus over there, because it honestly really self-regulates. So, and as we look and model any kind of downturn, we like the position we're in because we feel like we can lean into that and find market share opportunities. So we're continuing to invest. We're making the back-to-back biggest capital expenditures we've ever done in the history of the business. And those are underway right now. And so, we're very, very bullish, but we also take the long view. We've been around 87 years. And so,
Wow.
we're thinking about the next 87. We're not thinking about the next quarter or anything like that. So, we think the future's very bright. It's definitely going to be different. I think that, we've all automated processes, but nobody's digitally disrupted anything. And I don't know that our industry is going to be this stark digital disruption, but it's definitely going to be digitally enabled. And I think there's a lot of areas of opportunity that actually create win-win-win situations that we are exploring with right now with partners to elevate the client experience and do that, hand in glove with our distribution partners.
So as we wrap this up, I know you're always reading and learning and growing, but from a standpoint of kind of upskilling, where do you want to be in 12 months from now? What do you want to grow into and improve? What's the number one thing?
Personally, I want to continue to improve and hone, keystone habits, dietary habits, because I think, that's a perfect complement to the physical fitness piece of it. From a leadership standpoint, you're never done, right? So I think one of the great things, or one of the key things to resilience is curiosity and then adaptability. Because I think if you're adaptable, you're resilient. And so, as you continue to read and expose yourself to new ideas, I think, if you can find those, not the fringe elements, but maybe, a standard deviation away from the bell, kind of listening to those, to the chatter out there, I think is going to be extremely important to really kind of understanding what's next. And that's why we're always trying to talk to great thinkers like yourself and others that we have in our circles, right? And I think that's the key, is to keep people you aspire to in your circles, and that'll set you up for future success.
Well, I've been a big fan of OFS and the culture, I don't know, for however long James Reese started with you guys, probably a couple decades ago. So I appreciate you coming on the Resilience Lab, and I look forward for us to continue to collaborate together and learn new things.